So the war, as you mentioned, is entering its fourth year now in
Yeah.
a couple of months. In about 4 or 5 months, we're going to be in the fourth year of the war, right? I never thought this war would last this long, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure neither did the Russians or nor the Ukrainians. But here we are entering the fourth year of this longest war in Europe. And when the war began in 2022, began as a conventional war. You had tanks, you had artillery, you had fighter aircraft, you had special forces, infantry, all of that. Those regular, assaults that we were talking of, right? And these were beaten back. They were fought to a standstill. The Ukrainians inflicted heavy losses on the Russian armor. They shot down a number of their aircraft. All of that happened. And then what you saw then was in 2023, the Russians then moved back to they started playing to their strengths, which was artillery. So Russia, what a lot of people might have forgotten, is always been an artillery heavy army. If you're looking at ordnance on target, Russians prefer dropping that ordnance through rockets, tube artillery, rockets and guns. So the war then began moving towards artillery. So you saw the Russians at one point were firing between 20 and 30,000 shells a day.
Wow.
And to give you an idea what 20 and 30,000 shells is, the Indian Army in the course of the Kargil war over 3 months, they fired 2.5 lakh
Yeah.
shells. The Russians were doing that in a little over a week. They were literally firing millions of rounds of artillery. And so whatever gains they've made was on the back of artillery. But then in 2023, we saw a very interesting phenomenon unfolding, which was drones started entering the battlefield. And this is primarily because they've kind of exhausted most of their other stuff, right? Their tanks are being, their artillery guns, they don't have enough ammunition. So then they say, hey, listen, this is the best way of getting ordnance on target. And so you have the FPV drones, the first person view drones coming in, where you have guys literally taking these hobby drones, which were built for racing, and attaching an explosive onto it. In this case, RPG-7 shells were just strapped onto FPV drones, and they were literally piloted into targets. So that was the one drone at the lower levels. That's for the battalion level. At the top end, you saw the Russian Federation going to Iran and taking their Shahid 136 drone. Now the Shahid is an interesting drone. It is a copy of the same German DAR, the Dornier anti-radar, which the Germans had developed in the 1980s. And of course, the Israelis had picked that up as well. So Germans, Israelis, they're very good engineers. And the Iranians just took it, they copied it, reverse engineered a lot of the components. And because they didn't have an air force, they started producing them in the tens of the thousands. So then when the Russians went to the Iranians, said, hey, listen, you have this tech, help us set up our own production line. So you have a factory today in Tatarstan, in the Russian Federation, which is far north. It's about 1,500 kilometers plus from the Ukrainian war battlefront. And interestingly, it's just up the Caspian. So if you see, the Iranians can actually sail up across the Caspian and go up a river, and you land up at that factory in Yalabuga. And they've helped set up this massive plant. They've given them transfer of technology, and they're building these Shahid 136 licensed produced versions, which the Russians call the Geran 1 and the Geran 2. Geran 2 is identical to the Shahid. And so in 2025, when you had 10s and 20 drones being fired, cruise missiles being fired, in September, you've seen two massive attacks where these drones have been fired in close to 1,000 a day. Right? 800 drones are being fired in one go. Now, you just imagine that salvo of drones coming in. How many can you shoot down? 20%, 30% will get through, right? And they will hit your targets. They'll hit, your buildings. They'll hit command posts. They'll hit vehicles. Do all of that. So it's a lot of damage that can be caused at a cost that is just about $50,000 a drone. That's all it costs. And you're looking at a pilotless aircraft, which is about, like I said, about 11 feet tall and about 6 feet wide. It carries a 50 kg explosive to a distance of almost 2,000 kilometers. So you can launch them in very large numbers. And of course, like the Russians are producing them at scale. They're producing them like 10 and 15 a day, which is coming out of the factory. So there are those visuals that the Russians produced, this year, to show this production line that was buzzing with all of these big drones, the black ones that are coming out, the Geran 2s, just to say that is psychological warfare, yeah? Russian style, saying we've got these, we're producing them at scale. Can you imagine the kind of damage that this will cause?